Live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, this is Dr. John Stamey, and I want to welcome everybody to ScaryCast. We got a great show tonight, got a brand new co host that I am really excited about. This is an interesting fella from Las Vegas, Nevada. It is Rockin' Randy. How are you doing tonight, Randy?
Randy, Rockin Randy is delighted to be on the show. Finally, I've got the East and the West connection all together. We're going to tag team this show and make one of the hottest shows all around America. I'm doing great, and thank you for having me on the show tonight.
You are welcome. Now you said a very important term. Now I love wrestling. I was a wrestling announcer for 5 years, professional wrestling announcer for the PWF in Charlotte. And so you
Uh,
mentioned wrestling. Tell us a little bit about your background in wrestling.
I was a professional wrestler from the '80s into the '90s. I wrestled in the NWA, the original NWA. I was part of the original Midnight Express. Traveled all over the world, and the wrestling is like my mistress of love. That squared circle is your stage. It's one of the greatest things you can do is go out there and perform, perform with people, and it's a love. Even though today it's a little different, but it's still a love I can't get out of my heart. And I just love talking to fans and people out there who like to reminisce about wrestling. And you know, anybody's out there, they want to get a hold of me, they can always get a hold of me and I'll send them pictures and stuff like that. They go through you and get the information. And, like I said, I wrestled for 12 years and the world heavyweight champion 3 times, 6-man tag team, 3-man tag, 2-man tag team, intercontinental, TV champion. You name it, I've held just about every belt in there except for the ladies championship.
That's great. Look, thanks for that. And I know I'm probably going to, as our episodes go by, I will ask you more about wrestling. And I've got some friends that are wrestlers. I hope to have the great Susan Green, who is truly the greatest lady wrestler of all time, in my opinion, have her on here in a couple of weeks. I got to give her a call. I haven't talked to her in a couple of weeks. She had COVID. She's back now, and I know she's ready to go. She's a great lady. And some of the other wrestlers that I know.
She was actually a pioneer of ladies wrestling.
Yes, she was.
You
She
know, I mean,
was.
she was the knockdown brawler. I'll stomp you. See, back in those days, in my days, a punch was a punch, a slap was a slap. And you see those women back in the day, they grab them by the hair and throw them around the ring. Today they don't do that. She
Now
was a
they did.
pioneer.
They did. Those gals were tough back then. Like the guys
They
were
were.
the early Harley race and the early Ric Flair were no pushovers. Now I'm gonna tell you that.
Uh, Believe me,
Same
I
thing.
know. I wrestled both of them one night in Atlanta, Georgia. And
Same thing
there's a
with
lot of other great wrestlers out there that people don't recognize. But Harley Race was a great one. Dick the Bruiser was one of the best wrestlers out there from back in the day.
That's
There,
right. Well,
these.
we're going to have to do some reminiscing about wrestling here on ScaryCast very soon. All right, tonight we've got a guest, one of my favorite guests. He's from Ewing, Virginia, a town that has one yellow light, one yellow caution light, and a stop sign. It's just great. Ewing, Virginia, the one and only Matthew Delph. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to definitely this show. I love the wrestling background. I was a huge wrestling fan growing up, especially the '80s, early '90s. Uh, he reminded me. He was talking about the Midnight Express stuff. Do you remember the Mulkey brothers that hadn't won a match like ever until I think they upset maybe something to do with the Road Warriors and the Russians? They actually Road Warriors did something in the tag team match, and Mulkey Brothers got their first win. But I go way back, all the way back to when they had Saturday Night's Main Event, NWA. You talk about Midnight Express, uh, all that. I
I
loved it.
wrestled the Road Warriors on a 25-foot scaffold above the ring with no net,
Mm,
and the Rock and Roll Express also. And I'll tell you what, when you're 25 feet in the air and you look down and you're going, "Oh hell no, I can't fall. This is going to hurt." you
Yeah,
know,
buddy.
it does. It really hurts. And but people say, "How do you do it?" You're an overpaid stuntman. I love the job. I love the fans. I love the people like you guys who watch wrestling over the years, and it brings back a lot of memories to see these guys. Like Moose Choloff and Dick the Bruiser, and a lot of the old timey guys from Chicago and stuff. And I learned how to wrestle in Chicago, and I went to Mexico and I wrestled Mel Mascaras. Beat him twice. Had to be escorted out by armed guards because they didn't want me to beat their TV champion. And it was crazy. And it's a wonderful world. And I'll tell you guys, I am so delighted to be out here tonight with you two. I mean, I'm seriously delighted.
Good. We're glad you
Yeah,
are.
Dick
All right.
Bruiser.
Well,
I, I'd watched
what?
him growing up. I was originally from Lafayette, Indiana. So
I
Dick,
wrestled in Lafayette, Indiana, many times.
yes, that's where I was born and raised. Can't tell by the accent, but that's where I was born and raised.
I wrestled Lafayette and Peru and Rensselaer.
Yep.
I wrestled in Peru at the circus barn where they do the circus and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
I wrestled in a lot of the colleges over there, but Indiana's got a lot of scary things going on over there too.
Yep.
And that's why we're
Does.
called ScaryCast. Absolutely. All right, Matt. I know that you have been down. You're primarily, at least we had always known you for years, as a Bigfoot hunter. But you've been down in New Orleans checking out some vampires and seeing what's going on down there. That's a very mysterious place. It's a scary place. It's a great town, great history, lots of ghosts, lots of things that are hard to explain. Tell us what you've been finding as you've been going to New Orleans.
Well, it all started, of course, a Bigfoot, whatever, and that just opened up Pandora's box. You got all kinds of stuff. If I'm looking at something that's not supposed to exist, what else is out there? So along this journey, I've come across all kinds of crazy stuff. And what sparked my interest, I've always been a fan of Dracula, the Bram Stoker Dracula. And they try to
Oh yeah.
romanticize, but everybody always thinks, well, there's, it's movies, stuff like that. Well, I started looking into a little bit of history around the area I live in Big Stone Gap, Virginia, an old coal mining town. They had reports in the 1890s of a vampire named Russ. So I started looking into it, and supposedly this vampire, this guy kept to himself. He showed up in the 1890s when all the coal mining was going on. The uh, the livestock and people's pets, stuff like that, all of a sudden started turning up, mutilated, drained of blood, uh, stuff like that. And then eventually, town drunk was found, drained of blood. Then a peddler that was selling snake oil, stuff like that, came up. Make a long story short, the townspeople started, questioning because these bodies were found a mile from that guy Rupp's house. Well, some children had went and they peeked in his cabin, and it looked like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you've ever seen that movie, there's bones all over the place, stuff like
Yes.
that. So they went back, told the people, so they show up and they actually burned down the cabin, but Vampire Rupp was not there, and he was never seen again. So that kind of sparked my interest a little bit. I'm like, well, maybe they're lying to us about this too. They lie to us about, they keep stuff covered up, the aliens, UFOs, stuff like that. So I start looking back into the whole vampire uh, stuff here in the United States. And what I'd found was the very first vampires supposedly were introduced in New Orleans back in the 1700s. I think it was around 1728, somewhere around there. They were built in New Orleans. The people were uh, the these rich people that were there. These aristocrats. They had, they needed brides, and the only women available there were usually thieves and prostitutes, stuff like that. So they started shipping women from France over to New Orleans, and they would bring them up in this Ursuline convent. In the convent, these nuns raised these women up how to be women so they could basically, mail order bride, marry them off to these rich guys. Well, this one group showed up. and they didn't have no paperwork. Nobody knew where they came from, and they had huge trunks, and they were odd. The sun kind of blistered their skin a little bit. That could have been anything, you know. Uh, but one thing that stood out is they told nuns at the convent not to open their trunk. They put them up in the third floor of this convent. So as time went on, these nuns, of course, they're like, well, you know, what's up with these trunks? Why don't they want them to be opened until they say it's, you know, necessary? So
Hey,
they go up
Matt.
there and the trunks are open with nothing in them. The shutters on this third floor of the convent is completely the shutters are open. There's nothing in the casket. If there was something or trunk, just might as well be a casket, shaped just like a
And
casket.
hey, Matt, I think Randy
Yep.
had a question for you.
Excuse me, Matt. Was that by any chance? Was that like Cantonet Saint Germain?
Yeah. Okay. Now
Because
see,
he was
that's
he
where
was like
later
the
on
original vampire. He was like the original vampire
he was
of
one
New
of the, you know,
Orleans.
yeah. Now see, he was in 1902. I done some research on him. Now his place was diagonal from the convent. You
Right.
can see his apartment where it was diagonal from the convent. So when I went down to New Orleans, I wanted to find out, hey, I need to talk to some locals. I need, you know what's going on here. And there was this one particular bar called the Dungeon.
Yes.
Now you're not allowed to video in there, not allowed to have your phone out, take pictures or anything. And the locals were saying it's because an old vampire would hang out in it. Whether it's true or not, don't know. But of course, me being down there, I had to find out. So it was it was super cold that night. Uh, it was on a Monday night. I figured there's not going to be much activity. It'd be a perfect time for something like a vampire or whoever, you know, to show up down there. So I go down there and I start talking, and I go in there. I'm minding my own business, and this one gentleman, him and his girlfriend, come up to me there in the dungeon, and they sit next to me. And he asked me, it was kind of odd. He goes, "What are you looking for?" And I kind of took me back a little bit. I'm like, "What do you mean? What am I looking for?" And he goes, "Well," he said, "what are you looking for?" He said, "You're in here alone. You're, you know, just hanging out, keeping to yourself." And I'm like, I said, "Well, you know, this is what I do. I research. I'm a what you consider, I guess, a real life monster hunter." And I said, "I'm just down here looking for answers." And so he starts telling me some of the stories and the stuff that goes along with them. Now, he started talking about that the locals won't go near that convent in between like midnight and 6 a.m. And I noticed that whenever I left, there was hardly nobody around that convent. It's got huge walls around it. Yeah, go ahead.
Matt, is that convent right off of the French Quarters?
Yes, it's right there in the French Quarter.
Um, Not to cut your story off, but speaking of vampires and witches and stuff, I was in New Orleans for like a week, and we were talking about there was a church, a convent, and they had a picture. It was a statue of Mary, Virgin Mary,
Hmm.
and when they shined the lights up on Mary, it was Jesus with his arms out. And we're going like, me and my guys are like, wow, this is kind of wild. Well, no more. We started walking up to that. We saw a man jump from rooftop to rooftop to rooftop on the top of the steeple and leap up. And he was like, every time he'd leap, he'd look at us. It scared the living hell out of me.
Yep, I love it.
Now, I don't know if it was a vampire, Dr. Jekyll, werewolf, skinwalker, but I'm telling you what, I when I told people about it, they go, yeah, whatever. My wife did not believe that. You ever watch that William Shatner show, Weirds and Things That Happen? He had
Unexplained.
to. He had that on his show, showing pictures of that man jumping from rooftop to rooftop that somebody videotaped.
I had reports. I've seen reports of people talking about that same place, and it's where the Pope stayed when he was in New Orleans. It was up on the very top. These people thought the guy was going to jump. All the
Yes,
locals are looking, and they're like, but he went up into the air and flew, and they were like, they didn't know what to say. Uh, I had lots of reports of people seeing that, and
This
people.
guy jumped like Spider-Man from wall to rooftop to rooftop,
Yeah, this
and he would
dude
glad.
just flew, I guess.
Yeah, that's what this guy did. He just when I say jumped, he just like kind of leaped from one building to the next.
That is awesome. That just goes to confirm. I'm glad you come forward with that because uh, they were explaining to me there that there were two types of vampires. You've got the ones that are born vampire, and they have vampire children. They're more like remember the old Nosferatu, stuff like that. More look like an alien form.
Right.
Then you have ones that walk amongst us that the locals say were the most dangerous. They walk amongst us, but in order for them to be a vampire hybrid or change, they have to be fed on for 4 days.
Whoa.
So that's when the whole story of Jacques Saint Germain had come across, and they were talking about that, and I seen it was diagonal from the convent, and it was 1902 is when that lady, that hooker, had jumped off second balcony. She fell. She's really bad hurt, and she went to the police, told them that he was trying to feed off of her, drink her blood. They show up,
Right.
nobody there, uh, and that he had been. They had no food. But what was strange was what caught my attention. They said that he had hosted these parties and stuff, and he always had all these rich people there and stuff. But he never ate. Nobody ever seen him eating. But
Is
he had
that the anti? Is
parties
that
there and
the
stuff.
anti-rice ball? Is that the anti-rice parties they would throw?
Uh, no, this was before Anne Rice. This is back in 1902, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and I was like, so okay, the police
I'm sorry, I
supposedly,
didn't mean to cut you off. I was just really interested in it.
yeah, they dropped the bottle of wine and it had blood in it instead of wine. So I go back and I start looking into this Saint Germain, and I look back through the census, and he had arrived in like 1890 from France into New Orleans. There's actual documentation of a Saint Germain entering New Orleans. Uh, and then it was reported back in 1930 he was seen on Mount Shasta. And if you're familiar with Mount Shasta in California, a lot of
Yes.
weird stuff goes on there. They said it was the same Jacques Saint Germain. So it brings the whole mystery, has really got me. But if you look at Saint Germain's his past, a lot of people talk about him being the alchemist. He was looking for the violet flame,
Mhm.
looking for eternal youth, whatever. He was. He supposedly walked with Jesus, and way back in those days, and all the way up till modern day. And even the locals there in New Orleans were telling me that he still shows up. That he shows up there on like rainy days. A lot of people, the kids that are there, like homeless and stuff like that, kind of hang out with each other around the railroad tracks and stuff. They said that a middle-aged man will show up. He's about 5'5", 5'6". They describe him just like everybody else does, and they called him Vampire Jack. He will show up and chit chat with them still, but the whole thing. Even reports of seeing him in the 1930s is what I thought was really cool, and actually found documentation of him being there in New Orleans. So we know there is some truth to a Saint Germain being there.
Well,
That's really interesting, Matt. I mean, Saint Germain has been seen everywhere. You've seen supposedly at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Now, later on in the show, I'm hoping he'll make it. Elijah Henderson is going to stop by. And what's interesting about Elijah is he is a distant relative of the Comte de Saint Germain. So I hope he makes it and he can tell us a little bit more about the guy.
Oh, that'd be great. That would
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, let me ask you a question if I can. I don't mean to step on anybody, but
yeah, go ahead.
I'm really enthused with what you're talking about. When I was in New Orleans, like I told you, we saw that thing jumping on the rooftops at night, and we told the police about it. And I had my tour bus down there, so you've been to New Orleans, you know where the convention center is,
Uh-huh.
and all at the very end of it, going south, There's where they make all the floats and stuff, down in that area.
Yeah.
And I had parked my bus in there. And of course, we got the generators on. And this thing just eeried me to death. Like all the way back, all of us were walking. It was like somebody was watching us. So I got in the bus. Before I got in the bus, we're all standing out there. And I'll be honest with you, I took my finger and licked it because we had dust on the bus. And I made crosses on the windows, on the doors, on the luggage compartments. And the only place I didn't put it on was my bus driver's door where the window slides sideways.
Uh-huh.
And I had my Bible sitting up there because I drive the bus a lot of times. And when I'm sitting there waiting these guys, whatever, I read the Bible, whatever. And that night we went to bed, on our bunks and stuff on the bed, and the engine's running. Something was shaking our bus. And the next morning, I said to the guys, they're going like, who the hell's out? I go, I ain't going outside. And the next morning we went outside, it was daylight, whatever, and they were bringing some of the floats out. There was hand marks like slashing down on those crosses that I had licked in dirt.
Mm.
I don't know who it was, but it could have been Saint Germain himself. I don't know, but we left there that day. I said, look, we got to get out of it because it just felt eerie after that. We were there for 5 days. It was like on the fourth day, we're out of here this morning, guys.
Well,
and that place is scary.
Saint Germain just wasn't the only one. Like there in 1932, the Carter brothers were two brothers. They were smaller guys. They were like 5'5", 5'6", and a young girl had escaped from their apartment, and they had showed up, and she had told the cops that she was being fed on by these two brothers, and so the cops showed up there, and there was like 14 dead bodies, I believe, inside the apartment, and there was 3 other people that were tied up being fed on. Now the locals told me that if you're fed on for more than 4 days is when you transform into a vampire. So the others had been there longer. There was 2 men and a young child and the little boy. Well, the Carter brothers showed up, and they said 6 or 7 cops couldn't handle one of the brothers, that their strength was super, and they jumped off the second balcony and hit the ground and took off running. Now,
Sounds like an interview with a vampire.
Yes, exactly. And so they had they went back. They let those, the people go that were in the apartment, and they caught the Carter brothers because they worked a regular job just like anybody else would. And that's where the locals were telling me that's where you got to watch it. They walk amongst us. The ones that have been fed on have been changed from the ones that are actually, to me, a different species of people, human, aliens, whatever you want to call these vampires. And the cops had come down there, and they gave themselves up. They said they were confessed, hey, we are vampires. We have to feed to survive. We do not like it. We want this done. So they hung them. They put them in their crypt. And the family crypt, Louisiana, it's below sea level. So all the tombs, a lot of them, especially down south, are above ground.
Right.
They put them in the family crypt. They opened the crypt to put another family member in there, and the Carter brothers are no longer there in the tomb. So people have reported seeing them still around that apartment, stuff like that. What was interesting, though, was if you look, the people that were actually victims at the time that was in the apartment, one of them became a serial killer. He killed like 32 people, something like that. All their bodies were drained of blood. The second one was a killer. He had killed, they said, over 400 people. They don't know if the bodies were drained of blood because he was dissolving the bodies in an acid. Now, reports say, whether it's true or not, I don't know. This is all speculation from, locals and stuff like that I was talking to down there. And they firmly believe vampires are real. They said that the young boy, they returned him home. His parents burnt him and the house down. And they told the law, they said that was not our child he brought home. So the whole vampire thing, I believe there's more down there more than just Saint Germain.
I heard
But
of
you
the
saw some other
Casket Girls.
huh?
I heard a story down there about the Casket Girls.
Yes, that's originally the ones that first were the ones that came from France. Don't know if they were the original vampires or if they had them in their trunks when they brought.
There's a bar on when you walk in. There's a she devil woman that sits at the top of the bar looking down on you, and they tell you not to look at her while you're drinking because the Casket sisters will visit you.
Hmm.
And it's right there. It's right there on the French Quarters. As a matter of fact, I think it's like right next to. They've got like a strip club right there, and then there's this bar right there beside that. And there's this big red woman she devil hanging off the ceiling, looking at you when you walk in the doorway.
Wow. I'll have to check that place
And
out when I go there.
yeah, it's right next to the nudie bar. I mean, that's how I remember where it's at. And they said, do not look at her because she will send the Casket Girls after you. We
Now,
heard a
is
lot of
this
scares.
is this a
Huh?
mannequin of a woman or is this a live woman?
No, this is a mannequin. It's I don't want to say mannequin because it's solid. Like it's almost like you don't see no joints, no nothing. It's just this big woman. She's naked and she's standing with her hands holding onto the wall, and she's bent over looking at you as you walk in the door. And we're in there. We're like, oh, check out the blah blah blah. The red chick with the boobs and this and that. And they go, don't stare. She'll send the casket women after you. And we're like, okay, well, it's time. Look at the time. I gotta go.
That's pretty wild. I know there's a vampire cafe, and if
Uh
you
huh.
speak to some of the other, they have these speakeasies that you can go to that could got a lot of people there that are into the whole vampirism thing, but they're not
Right.
actually real vampires. They, to me, I consider them wannabe vampires. They want to, they're romanticized by the whole vampire thing, and they try to drink blood, stuff like that. But to me, I don't consider that a real vampire. I'm after the actual real blood sucking, and I believe, there's got to be some truth to it that
Well,
we have
if
been.
you were to run her, how would you know if it was a real vampire or not? This is what I want to know.
I can feel different energy. I can feel when people are odd and different. Now, when I was down there, I was approached by two individuals. After I left I thought the guy that, well, three actually, the guy that was talking to me at the bar in the dungeon, he told me that vampire, the old vampire, don't hang out in there anymore because of too much tourism. But he was odd because he was giving me all these tips. You know, you want to know about this, go to this place here, this shop, ask for so and so, go to this place and stuff. And he had gave me his phone number, and I wasn't real too keen because I don't give a lot of people my phone number. And
Right.
I was like, well, I'm on social media, you could find me on there. He didn't have no social media. How many people now, and this is the year 2023, at the time, how many people don't have social media? Some
Right.
sort of form of social media, which I thought was odd. And uh, he gave me his phone number, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. They close at 3. They let us stay in there, hang out, drink, all that stuff. And what was odd was, you're hanging out, you're drinking with somebody, you've been out partying, whatever, all night long. Next day, you forget about them usually, or the next week, anything, you don't remember. 3 months later, I get a text from this guy, and he's asking me how my visit was and when I was going to be back so we could hang out and he could show me some cool, local, pretty crazy spot. And so I respond, he responded back to me, and so I mentioned Saint Germain, and no reply. After that, there was no other reply. And his name, all he told me his name was DJ. So it had
Mm.
a J in it, which all the, Jacques Saint Germain, and then the others were calling him Vampire Jack later on. So it kind of makes me wonder, did I really encounter the Count Saint Germain? And
Well,
then, uh,
do you think that Well, what I told you, what I saw. Do you think maybe that was him or that? I mean, normal people don't jump leap from building to building and fly like Superman. I mean, so
It might
there
not have been
are.
him particularly, but I believe there are more than one,
Uh
especially with them people being fed on. Because I had a gentleman approach me. I was walking back to the St. Pierre where I stayed at in the French Quarters, and this gentleman, here it is 4 o'clock in the morning, nobody's out in the street. It's raining. It's a Monday night. It's cold. It's down in the 30s in New Orleans. It's pretty cold for there. And there's nobody out. I'm walking back to the my room at St. Pierre, and it's raining. I'm hearing moans. It's crazy at nighttime there because down these alleys you can hear moaning, stuff
Oh yeah.
like somebody's
Oh
in pain,
yeah.
stuff like that. Well, this car approaches me, and it's a real nice, fancy car. Uh, I didn't pay attention to the model, but it was super nice. Well, the guy's lowered his window, and he asked me, he's like, "Excuse me," and he had a weird accent. He's like, "Excuse me, sir, would you," he asked me for some sexual advances, and I was like, "No, no, thank you, buddy." And he was dressed super nice. You could tell he
Uh-huh.
had money, and he looked like Tyler Perry off Medea. You ever seen Medea?
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's who
yeah.
he reminded me of. He looked just like Tyler Perry off Medea, and he's like, "Well, you have a good night, sir." And I turned him down, and he put the window up and he drove on. My first thought was, who uses sexual advances to lure people in? Dude had money, you could tell. People that are serial killers,
All
and of
right.
course, the whole vampire thing. But then there was
You,
another individual that approached me, and he had showed up, and he come up to me and asked me for a quarter. And this wasn't the same night; this was the next night. And there's all these people around me, yet he singled me out, come up and asked me for a quarter. I'm like, he said he needed a bus fare to go home. So I dig in my pocket and I'm looking around to make sure because you got to watch it down there. People pickpocket you and everything. So I pull out, I got $1 in my pocket. I'm like, "Hey man, I'll give you $1. This is to get you home. He said he needs for a bus. I said, "No, I just need a quarter." I was like, "Just a quarter only." He's like, "Yeah, if you have a quarter." So I got $1 and I dug around again and I was like, "Well, I actually do have a quarter." Because he wouldn't take the $1. If he was wanting
Right.
money, why wouldn't he not take that $1? And he said, "No, just a quarter." So I pulled it. I found a quarter in my pocket. I gave it to him. He said, "Thank you. God bless you." Later on, I'm talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, "So he asked you for a quarter." She goes, "Have you ever heard of the pirate stuff? Kind of like uh, have a quarter, uh, have a quarter spare, or no mercy, or have a quarter mercy, no quarter, no mercy." I was like, "No." And she goes, "If you had to survive off feeding off people and killing people, who would you choose?" And I thought, I
The
thought that was
homeless.
really odd, which I knew the energy from that individual was really odd. So it made me think
Yeah.
that quarter may have saved my life that night.
Yeah.
all right, all right. Hey, Matt and Randy, I'd like to. We've got a guest joining us now. He is come out of the traffic jams and everything. This is Elijah Henderson from up in Clarksville, Tennessee. How you doing tonight, Elijah?
Hey y'all, traffic's been
Hey,
terrible
Elijah.
Eli-
here. It took me an hour and
Elijah,
40
how you doing,
to come.
buddy?
How's it going, Randy? You doing all right, buddy? Matt, you doing all right,
I'm
brother?
doing fine.
I'm doing good. Glad you made it.
We're glad
Yeah,
you're here.
from what I heard, a truck carrying logs turned over or something, and the guy's fine, but it ruined traffic in Clarksville.
I
Uh,
bet it did. Now the reason I wanted you on here is I knew we were going to be talking a little bit about Saint Germain, and rumor has it that you are a distant relative of Saint Germain's. Can you kind of explain that to us?
Well, yes, if he was who he said he was historically, he was alleged to have said that he was the son of Prince Francis Rogotsky II. And if he was who he claimed to be, then I'm related to Francis Rogotsky II, which would put me in relation to the Comte de Saint Germain. Um, as you know, John, I'm a big fan of his story historically. I got a big old shot glass or something here with his face on it. Gabby got me for Christmas. But as a man, historically, he was a very interesting figure. Very unusual, but very interesting indeed. But if he was who he claimed to be historically, then I'm related to him in some manner.
Now, doesn't
There are a
that
number
go
of
back to
stories about
Transylvania?
yeah, there are a number of stories about who he
Armenia?
actually is, but we'll probably never know. But he certainly got around, didn't he, man? Elijah.
Yeah, he sure did. And Matt, I think Francis Rogotsky did go back to Transylvania. I think he was a Transylvanian prince or something to that effect.
Okay.
But if the all the stories about him are true, he's definitely made tracks all over the place. And um, historically, he read to be like almost like a human man who just has special gift for alchemy and whatnot. But in more recent times, somehow along the lines, people turned him like into a deity, and he's get taken on a stranger role. And even a certain occult writer claimed that he's going to be showing up in the next year or two to bring about their cosmic Christ of the New Age, Maitreya, in 2025. Or
Well, can these people, Matt? I don't mean to cut you off, but say he's coming back. Can they Can they shift change? Shape shift in any way?
I think that same occult writer, her name's Alice Bailey. She's with the she was with the Lucifer Trust, and she wrote like 24 esoteric books. It was supposedly channeled to her by a an ascended master, or something like that.
Yeah, he was in search for the violet flame. He
My
was an
grandma.
ascended master. Supposedly, he had found it and he could see it. He was looking for eternal life. That's where the whole thing crosses with the vampire stuff. Because if he was actually what he says he was from the past, then he wouldn't be a vampire unless was changed from a real vampire into one that walked amongst us. Then that would explain him still being around vampire stories like
See, his
New
legend
Orleans.
goes in so many different directions. It's hard to kind of pinpoint one.
What I thought was interesting, seeing him in Mount Shasta in the 1930s. Uh, if anybody knows anything about Mount Shasta, that place is crazy. I plan on going there this summer and checking it out. You got the Lemurians, supposedly, back with Atlantis and stuff, that hang out around Mount Shasta, that are supposedly inside Mount Shasta. And, it's like, well, what was this Jacques Saint Germain doing at Mount Shasta? You know?
So my sister this summer, if all goes to plan, she's going with a friend to Oregon, and they're going down a trip all the way down the coast, and they may actually be going through Mount Shasta on the way back up or the way down to because they're going so far into California and then going all the way back up to Washington and flying home. So they may actually go to Mount Shasta.
There's a lot. I've heard a lot of.
Yeah, Randy.
I've heard a lot of stories about Mount Shasta. Not only vampires, witches, a lot of skinwalkers, and a lot of Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And we just had Dan Shaw on last night, and he talked about Mount Shasta a little bit. He lives about an hour and a half from there. So I mean, he's been there. He says it is pretty scary, and you got to be careful, or you might slip into a vortex, and it might be a one-way vortex, and you don't get to come back. I said that just doesn't sound good to me.
I had heard a story. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I'm just saying, a lot of people go missing there.
They do.
I was gonna say, people say that they've walked between trees in Mount Shasta, or walked over vines that were arched like Bigfoot puts up, and people have actually walked through and disappeared.
Could be a portal.
And they're like, where'd they go? And then other people walk through it and nothing's happened.
Right.
I've got a book here somewhere at the house that says that somewhere on Mount Shasta or underneath it, there was a type of MK Ultra programming facility somewhere in there. I don't know if that's true or not, or if it's still there, if it ever was. but it listed Mount Shasta as one of the locations for programming, which kind of makes sense with a lot of people going missing.
Very true. But the reports of the Lemurians, these giants, they have been reported, people seeing them. And the Lemurians, only certain people they will allow to see them if they are a higher vibrational type person, that they will allow them to view them. And most people can't see them, but if they are a higher consciousness, vibrational level, higher energy person, empath, the psychic type, that they allow them to see them. What was interesting, if you ever look back on history, there was a fire that was burning up Mount Shasta, and it stopped at like a certain point. All of a sudden, something just stopped it, the whole thing. So, there's something going on there for sure. There's no doubt.
Well, Mount Shasta is supposed to have giants um, living in the mountains and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they say these giants are like the guardians of the mountain. Now, I think Elijah and I have talked about this guy we saw that who actually saw a giant go in and close his stone wall behind him. And, there's a lot of crazy stuff in Mount Shasta.
Yeah, I think that one we were talking about is up in Oregon, wasn't it, Randy?
Yeah, up in Oregon. But still, kind of close to have all these giants and crazy stuff going on, though.
Yeah, that's not far from it,
No, not far at all.
Well, if they're volcanoes and they got the volcano tubes and all these passageways, all that stuff's connected. And if it's these giants, a lot of people think they're the Lemurians from way back with Atlantis that are there. That's where they went to whenever, the world shifted and Atlantis got covered up in water, whatever.
Well, the giants are still on the earth. I don't know if you've seen the story in Iraq where the soldiers went into a cave and they all got killed. And so they sent the Navy SEALs up there to find these guys. And one of the soldiers walked in, and this 15 to 20-foot giant took a spear and stabbed this soldier. And he, because he saw these bones and stuff laying around in uniforms. And I guess the military, the guys, the other 5 or 6 were there, shot this giant, killed it. And when they called it in, helicopters came, bagged it, tagged it, and airlifted it out. And these guys were told never to talk about this again. And the guy finally told the story. He said, "Look, I'm out of the military. They've done nothing for me. But my friends were killed there." And more giants are coming out in these strange places like where Bigfoot and, all these different places. So, the weird things that happen in this world, I think now because the world's getting ready to come to, the day the rapture's coming back, I truly believe all the evil's coming out right now.
Very
Seems
true.
like something's coming to a head for sure.
Yeah, now they say April 8th. Now we're supposed to have a lunar eclipse. All hell's supposed to break loose.
Supposedly National
That don't
Guard
seem like
going to be
nothing
in
good on the
Oklahoma,
horizon.
Texas, and crazy.
What was that, Matt?
Why would they be there? What's the point? If that's true, makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Right now,
Yeah.
we've got special ScaryCasts. I believe it's on the 7th, and we've got special ScaryCasts on the 6th and the 7th. We're going to do a pre-eclipse show on the 6th and a post-eclipse show on the 7th. I'm trying to get a couple of guests that really know a lot about astrology that are going to help us out on that. So just working on it, and we should have a good show or good 2 shows about the eclipse on April 6th and 7th. So everybody be sure to join us. Tell your friends, like Matt Man said. Absolutely. So yeah, it's gonna be a blast. And by the way, while I've got the floor, I want to say thanks a lot to our sponsor, Mind Zero. Mind Zero is a spa. It gets up to 200 degrees in there. You go in there for 10 minutes, and then you do a cold plunge. It's 43 degrees. And that is supposedly one of the healthiest things that you can do. There are Mind Zeros coming soon to you. We've got one in Myrtle Beach. We've got a Mind Zero opening up next month in Mount Pleasant, which is right outside of Charleston. They're opening up one in Boulder, Colorado, Raleigh, North Carolina. So we've got some great Mind Zeros, and we'll be talking more more and more about them. Now, I'm an investor. I believe in Mind Zero. So if you got any questions, just send me a message, and I'll tell you. I'll tell you if I know when the next Mind Zero is coming near you. It's fun,
We have,
healthy, and it's something really, really special. So check out Mind Zero.
I
is
love
that
it.
mind like MIND?
MINDZERO.
All right.
Mindzero.com. You got it.
Last time I had something like that happen to me, I was in Chicago. It's called a Russian bath.
Oh, really?
And yeah, in Chicago, they have them called Russian bathhouses. And I was kind of weary when I went with my cousins and stuff, but you go in, there's 3 tiers of lava rocks they steam the room with. And these guys will get so hot and sweaty, they actually take cold buckets of water and pour it on the top of your head and to cool off. But after you're in there for like 30 minutes, they make you go out and you jump in a concrete chilled pool.
Oh,
And let me tell you what, my feet felt like I was stepping on glass. But I was so relaxed when I got out of there. I had to sit in the place for 2 hours because I couldn't raise my arms up to even put my clothes on.
wow.
Wow. Well,
Exhilarating.
there's some things like that that are healthy. So check out mindzero.com. Find out when one's coming to a location near you. All right, back, and
Oh,
I'm gonna turn the floor over, Elijah. Let's hear a little bit more from you about Comte de Saint Germain and some things like that. You got the floor,
Okay.
Elijah.
I'm about 30 minutes late. So what's a general recap? What have we been talking about in the room?
how
We've been
good you
talking about
look.
vampires. Matt,
We ain't
Matt,
gonna talk about that.
give Elijah a little recap of what you've been talking about.
Uh, Basically, the whole vampire first becoming the first case of vampires supposedly coming from New Orleans, the Casket Girl up to Saint Germain, the Carter brothers, the 2 different types of vampires locals were telling me about when I was there investigating, uh, and a little bit of strange events happened while we were there, while I was in New Orleans. But Saint Germain, I had actually seen that there was documentation from a census of him being there in like 1890, and supposedly the 1902 is when the incident happened with the prostitute that had fell off the balcony. She jumped off the balcony when he was trying to take her blood, and that he still reports of him showing up there at times, all the way up to him being reported in 1930s being on Mount Shasta. Uh, Basically, a rundown, some of the history of the vampire in New Orleans.
That's awesome, man. You're lucky. I'd like to go back down to New Orleans at some point. I went some years back and got to see the stand up cemetery. The forget the proper
one.
the what
St. Louis one.
the St. Louis one. I got to see Marie Laveau's grave and whatnot. But yeah, I'd love to go see it again sometime. And I read a comment on YouTube a while back. It was a goodly sum back, and I tried to actually get in contact with the person, and never got a reply back from them. But they said that they were actually at an occult art gallery down somewhere in New Orleans. It was some sort of an art gallery, and a feller was there, and he said he was the Comte de Saint Germain. He claimed to be him, had black hair, and the guy was there with his sister, and he didn't really associate much with him, but he kept really um, talking fondly with his sister and um, recommending certain authors to her. But I think he may have ended up buying something from that gallery, but he claimed to have been Saint Germain, and I forget the specifics, but there's some other story that kind of floats around a little bit of during like Hurricane Katrina. 2 men were standing guard somewhere, and a man walks up to him and says, uh, "What was that?" I think he just walked right up to him in the middle of the storm and said, um, "What a lovely night to be Jacques Germain," or something, and disappeared. Something strange like that.
I'm
So,
glad you mentioned that he had a female with him too, because I had encountered in the dungeon, which a lot of locals said that you're not allowed, of course, you're not allowed to video in there, not allowed to take pictures. That was the reason was because no vampires hanging around. Well, an individual had approached me in there, and he had a female with him, and he had no social media, anything like that. Gave me his phone number, and he was telling me all these different places, and all he gave me his name was DJ, had a J. Now a lot of the other locals were telling me that Jacques Saint Germain still hung out around there, and is mostly around homeless people and stuff. And he was giving me different advice. He gave me his phone number, and 3 months later, this guy texts me. I mean, how many people do you know are going to text you back? You're drinking with somebody 4 o'clock in the morning in a bar in a town, that's, you're not, it's not your home state or anything, but yet he still responded back to me like 3 months later and
Interesting.
quit.
Well, just
responding when I
Matt,
asked
just
about
about a
Saint
week
Germain.
ago,
Got anything
just
back?
about a week ago, Matt, you and I were on the phone, and I called up that number, and someone did answer and said DJ's not here. And so I still got the number. We'll probably try to call him again sometime.
Yes, because he asked me when I was coming back. He asked me if I found anything I was looking for. And when he approached me and he had this female with him, he asked me because, he just come up out of the blue and just sit next to me, asked me what I was looking for. He knew I was there for some reason. And he had an odd energy. I can usually read people, if it's something good or bad. He didn't seem threatful, but it was different. It was a different energy. He meant me no harm. And it's like he was wanting to give me a little bit of info, but he was telling me different places to go, different people to talk to. He gave me a lot about respect in the world. You got to respect the homeless, respect everybody. And he had went and he had, told me all these different stories and stuff. And it was a really cool, conversation. But what really shocked me was this guy contacted me, several months later after I had already left. And I totally forgot about, I'm doing all kinds of stuff all the time. And all of a sudden I get this text from DJ, and that's why I have down my phone DJ from New Orleans. And it pops up and he's like, "Hey man, when you come back, blah blah blah, like check some more stuff and some more people," which was really, really cool, I thought. But it was kind of odd too that guy didn't have no social media. I mean, who nowadays don't have anything, social media platforms at all? Really strange because he knew I was there looking for something. And I didn't give off that energy. I didn't give off, I went in there, I was playing it cool. I went in there, got a drink, sat down, just kind of checking the place out. And he just approached me and he's like, "Hey, sits down next to me and he bought me a shot. He's like, so what are you looking for? And I didn't notice. I do not think he drank. I'm not positive, but I know he ordered me a shot, asked me what I was drinking, and then he ordered me a shot. But I don't remember him drinking it, which was kind of odd now that I think about it.
Well, vampires can't drink alcohol, right?
I don't know. Supposedly Saint Germain didn't drink anything but his wine. I know he didn't eat anything because all the parties that he hosted, stuff like that, everybody said they'd never seen him eat anything. And when the cops supposedly went back to his apartment, which was diagonal from the Ursuline convent, it was just diagonal. How convenient that there was no food in his fridge or anything like that. Just the bottles of wine that supposedly one was dropped or they inspected it. Depends on which story you hear. But there was blood inside those wine bottles.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be going visiting JD sooner, Matt.
Yep. All right. I tell you what, we're about at our witching hour. We're about at our hour. And what I'd like to do, Elijah, I want to ask you a quick question. Will you come back next week with Rockin Randy and me?
I will do my best.
Okay, great. We'll check on the date and we'll try to secure that here in the next day or so. And thanks for dropping in on our inaugural show with Rockin Randy. And
Thanks for
Randy,
having me, y'all. Randy, it's good to see you, buddy.
Good to
too,
see
man.
you, my brother.
Yeah. And Randy, I'm going to give you the last question to Matt Delph, our guest.
Matt, My last question is: are vampires really dead?
I don't believe that
Does that
they are
make
actually
it?
dead. I believe if you look at like they explained to me, the two different types of vampires. One is like an alien race, and to be a vampire, you've got to be born a vampire. You know, the old Nosferatu alien-looking thing with the bald head, pointed ears, crazy kind
Right.
of thing. And
Right.
then you have the hybrid type, and that the locals tell me, you know, been fed on for 4 days. Those are the ones that are dangerous because they walk amongst us. You can't tell them from the other people. So they look like normal people. Do I believe they are dead? No. Do I believe there is something of a hybrid form? Very possible. Because
So they didn't actually die. They were born into this, and this is what they do. But do they die like we do? That's my biggest thing right there. Is, you know, can they die like we do?
Probably, I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. But I'm sure because you'd be overpopulated with them if that was the case. I would think. So there's something got to be. You know, they might live. To me, I don't believe it's eternal life, but I believe they live a lot longer than what a human.
Okay.
That's just my personal beliefs.
Oh, like I said, I wouldn't be visiting JD real soon in New Orleans, buddy. Well, I'll tell you what, I ain't going back.
I'm going back to New Orleans. I'm hoping to be there sometime this summer. I've got other places planned too, Mount Shasta, everywhere. This past year, I went from Death Valley, California, stayed the night at Area 51. I've been to the Everglades with David Shealy. I've been all over the place.
Area 51's not far from me in Vegas.
Yep.
If you get to Area 51, stop by and see me in Vegas.
Yeah, I went through Vegas there. It was the last week of December, right after Christmas break, is when I went through there and spent the night there in Area 51. I've got a daughter that's in Reno right now, so I'll definitely be going back through that way.
Well, we got the four of us got to get together and do something here in Vegas.
Definitely, most definitely.
And gentlemen, it's just been a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight.
Well, thanks, Randy. We're glad to have you here. Elijah, thank you for coming by and bringing a little bit of knowledge to us about Saint Germain. Matt, I always enjoy having you on the show. You have good comments and you've done a lot of explorations. So you have a lot of knowledge that you can share. And of course, Rockin' Randy, our new co-host. Will you come back next week, next Thursday night, Rockin' Randy?
You can ask me anytime you want. You can call me the day of. I'll be more than happy to co-host, do anything that you guys want to do or you want to do. You don't have to ask twice like I tell Elijah. Just say, hey, I need you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and set it up with you right now for next Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I'm Dr. John Stamey. We had Rockin' Randy as our co-host. Our guests were Matt Delph and Elijah Henderson. So we'll be back next time, probably next week. We've got a couple of shows lined up. Be sure to check out the website. They'll get posted on Facebook. It'll get posted on iHeartRadio. And of course, on our YouTube channel, Bigfoot and Company. See everybody next time on the one, the only ScaryCast. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, y'all.